This isn't a love story. This is a morality earthquake, where a poor single mom becomes a billionaire's only proof that integrity still exists. This billionaire thought integrity no longer existed. Until this single mother returned $1 billion nobody would have ever known she received. Tell me in the comments, would you ever return it? And if you're still watching, subscribe now before you scroll. The night was too quiet for comfort. Not the peaceful kind of quiet, the kind that feels like the world forgot you exist. Jennifer's sofa sat on the edge of her old queen size mattress, a mattress that should have been replaced 5 years ago, but she had mastered the art of ignoring discomfort. On her left arm, her baby boy slept, cheek pressed against her chest, breathing softly. On her right hand, her phone screen glowed just bright enough to reveal the shape of her face in the darkness. Her lips were slightly chapped. Her eyes were tired. Her hair was tied up loosely in a messy bun. There was a calmness in the posture, but a storm behind the eyes. This was the hour where mothers don't cry because tears are emotional. They cry because pain now has a schedule. And tonight was a familiar chapter. She had exactly $3.62 left in her account. Rent was 2 weeks overdue. The red letter was still taped to the fridge like a scar. The fridge had nothing inside except 1 bottle of formula, half a jar of peanut butter, and a single apple. She counted the baby's diapers twice just to make sure she wasn't hallucinating the number. 5 diapers left. Not a pack. Not half a pack. Just 5. Jennifer wasn't someone who asked for pity. She wasn't someone who blamed anyone for her life. Life happened, and when it did, she didn't have a backup system, a rich relative, or a spouse to support her. Her son's father vanished before the child even said his first word. Nobody came to save her. So she saved herself piece by piece, day by day, even when it broke her. She worked nights in a laundromat and cleaned office spaces before sunrise. Her back pain had become a permanent part of her identity. But the one thing she always protected was her child's innocence. Her baby shouldn't grow up remembering hunger. She made sure of that. That's why she never ate until he slept. That's why she never let him see her stare at the empty fridge too long. That's why she hummed lullabies even when her heart was bleeding. Because children shouldn't feel the weight of adult suffering. Jennifer protected him from that, even on the nights where she felt she herself was disappearing. Tonight, she whispered again the sentence she said every night. Mommy will figure out. But this time the voice cracked. This time the lie felt heavier. She lowered her phone brightness and scrolled through online job listings. Every single one felt like a rejection waiting to happen. Must have 3 years experience. Must have transportation. Full availability required. Weekend shifts mandatory. Jennifer stared at those requirements as if they were jokes. She had experience. She just didn't have the luxury of a clean resume. She had transportation. 1 bus at 5:45 a.m., another at 6:10 a.m., and both sometimes didn't run if the weather was bad. She had availability, just not the kind that let you abandon your baby. And weekend shifts? Those were the only days she sometimes allowed herself 1 hour of uninterrupted sleep. Outside her window, the sky was black as ink. Streetlights flickered. A stray dog barked. A siren echoed somewhere far. Her child twitched slightly in his sleep, little fists curling, maybe dreaming about something innocent, maybe dreaming about a world he didn't know was cruel yet. Jennifer slowly stroked his tiny back, her thumb gently brushing his soft baby shirt. This was her reason, her anchor, her universe. She breathed in slowly, holding back the burn behind her eyes, refusing to cry again tonight. She had cried enough tears to fill oceans, and they never paid rent. She needed a miracle, not more tears. Minutes passed quietly. Her phone battery was low. She ignored the 7% warning. She refreshed job listings again. Scroll, refresh, scroll, refresh. Every refresh was a small spark of hope. Every scroll was a small funeral for expectation. Her life had become a loop she couldn't escape, a cycle of survival, a life where she was always 1 bill away from disaster. But she kept going because mothers don't have the option to collapse. And then it happened. Her phone vibrated. Not the normal gentle buzz of a friend's message. This one was heavier, longer, different. Her baby shifted slightly at the sudden vibration, eyes still closed, tiny fingers pressing against her collarbone. Jennifer blinked. Notification. A single ping. Something unusual. She lifted the phone closer. Her breath held itself inside her chest without her permission. She squinted, adjusting her eyes. The notification preview glowed on her lock screen. Numbers. Too many numbers. She blinked again to refocus. And then her face slowly changed. Shock, confusion, a rising panic. Because the notification on her lock screen said, $1,000,000,000.00 received. From CEO Holdings Incorporated. $1 billion. Not 1,000. Not 1,000,000. 1 billion. Jennifer froze. Her throat dried. Her fingers trembled. Her pulse hammered against her ribcage. She couldn't breathe. Her mind didn't even process the meaning at first, because her brain simply refused to accept a reality so impossible. She didn't know if she should scream, or faint, or hide. Her heart wasn't beating fast anymore. It was slamming. Her whole body felt like electricity was running through her veins. Then something even stranger happened. Another ping. Another confirmation alert. Her jaw slowly fell open, eyes widening in disbelief. This was not a dream. This was real. Jennifer stared at the screen, terrified, unable to move, as if the entire universe had suddenly gone silent to witness this moment. Her baby slept peacefully against her chest, unaware that the world had just changed. If you can already feel the single mother's pain, comment where you're watching from and what time it is right now. And if this story already has your heart, hit subscribe so you don't miss. Jennifer's hands began to shake, not the kind of tremble caused by being cold, but the kind that happens when the human mind is pushed into a space it has never been before. She couldn't even blink. Her brain kept trying to make logic out of chaos. 1 billion? She whispered the words out loud, almost afraid they would vanish if she didn't confirm them with sound. The phone screen still glowed in front of her, the numbers still there, unchanged, unmoving, like the universe had paused to make sure she saw them clearly. $1 billion received from CEO Holdings, Inc. It didn't feel real. It didn't feel possible. It didn't feel like her phone anymore, but like she was holding a bomb. She swallowed hard. Her heart was thundering so violently she thought her baby might wake up from the vibrations inside her chest. She looked down at him, his small cheek still resting on her body, eyes closed, breathing softly. He had no idea that the world had just placed a kind of wealth in his mother's hands that could change 10 generations of their bloodline. No idea that poverty, the shadow they lived under, could be erased with one tap, one swipe, one tiny movement of her finger. Jennifer looked back at the screen again, her thumb hovering just an inch away, but never touching. That was temptation, pure temptation. It was like life had dangled a golden key inches from her face, after starving her, suffocating her, pushing her into near homelessness. She thought of everything she could change. The leaky faucet fixed, the empty fridge full, her baby's future safe forever, her rent paid, her debt gone, her anxiety cured, her shame erased. She could buy a home. She could buy 10 homes. She could buy a neighborhood. She could take her son somewhere where the air smelled like peace. For a split second, her imagination betrayed her. It allowed a vision to exist. A vision where she never worried again. A vision where money didn't control her breath. Where hunger didn't live in the same room. Where a child never had to see her hide tears again. Her bottom lip quivered. Her throat tightened. This was the most dangerous moment, because temptation hits hardest when the suffering is deepest. Her phone buzzed again. A second confirmation notification. A banking log message confirming internal coding ID. There was no glitch in the display. This was real. Her baby shifted slightly against her chest and she froze, instantly protective, like instinct warned her. Anything this big must be dangerous. She looked into the dark ceiling, eyes full of fear now, and whispered, "Don't touch it." Her voice cracked. As if saying it out loud gave her strength. She repeated, "Don't touch it, don't touch it." She moved her finger away from the screen, as if the money itself was toxic. Her breathing became shallow. Her heartbeat felt like a hammer beneath her ribs. Jennifer had known hunger. She had known exhaustion. She had known humiliation. But she had never known fear like this. Because this wasn't the fear of losing something she had. This was the fear of gaining something she was never meant to touch. Poverty trains you to believe abundance is illegal. Her hands were sweating now, palms slippery, fingers trembling so badly she almost dropped the phone. She clutched it tighter against her palm, careful, controlled, as if she were holding a weapon. She didn't know banking law. She didn't know corporate regulations. She didn't know financial security protocols. All she knew was, people go to prison for things like this, even if they didn't do anything wrong, even if it wasn't their fault. And Jennifer, she could survive pain, but she could not survive losing her child. She would never risk custody. Never. Her child was the only thing she still had, the only thing that made waking up worth it. Jennifer looked down at his sleeping face, his eyelashes resting against his cheeks, his tiny fingers curled slightly against her shirt. She whispered, barely audible, "I won't lose you. I won't." Her fear rose to her throat, and suddenly her survival instinct kicked in. Without thinking, she slid the phone under her pillow, as if hiding it would hide the danger. Her hand didn't leave the pillow. She pressed down on it, like she needed to keep the phone still, like she needed to stop the world from exploding. She looked around the room, as if expecting police to break the door down, as if the universe had eyes. Her mind raced. Is someone watching? Is there a camera? Is this a scam? Is this a setup? Am I being tested? She forced herself to breathe deeply, in through the nose, out through the mouth, trying not to faint. Her baby shifted again. She stroked his back gently with her fingertips, trying to stay calm. She had to think. She had to survive. She had to choose integrity over desperation. But temptation was still there, dancing around her mind, whispering. One swipe, one tap. Nobody would know. But integrity is hardest when life is cruelest. And Jennifer, even in her brokenness, knew something. Some money destroys souls. And she refused to let poverty trick her into becoming evil. She kept her hand on the pillow, breathing slowly, anchoring herself. The world was about to change forever. But right now, the only thing she could do was not collapse. Jennifer lay on her bed in the dark, hand pressing the pillow to hit her phone, trembling, terrified, knowing that one wrong movement could destroy everything. Be honest. What would you do if $1 billion entered your account overnight? Comment your honest answer. And if you're still watching, show some love and hit subscribe. Across the city, skyscrapers glowed like frozen flames piercing through the rainfall. The storm outside the glass tower wasn't loud. It was steady, rhythmic, like the sky was tapping on the windows with wet knuckles. Inside that tower, on the 112th floor, in an office larger than some small apartments, the lights were dim. The city skyline sat below like a digital kingdom, glowing, pulsing alive. And standing at the center of that office, hands in pockets, posture controlled, jaw clenched, was Tony Jeff, the man the world called the billionaire with nerves of steel, a man whose decisions shifted global currency flow, a man whose signature moved markets, a man who could buy entire skyscrapers with less emotion than most people used to buy groceries. But tonight, he wasn't thinking about stocks, or buyouts, or dividends. He was thinking about a single mother who lived in an apartment so small it wouldn't even qualify as a storage room in his tower. He wasn't watching trading charts. He was watching her, digitally, through private security algorithms, through internal transfer notifications. He didn't know her personally, not yet, but he knew enough. Name, Jennifer Sofa. Status, single mother. Balance before deposit, $24.16. Spending pattern, diapers, baby formula, occasional dollar, store food items. Zero luxury, zero self, indulgence, zero outgoing funds on non-essential items. Statistical anomaly. She spent only on the child, never herself. That was what caught his eye originally, weeks ago. She was flagged by one of his behavioral ethics models, not for fraud, but for restraint. Tony had built an AI department that tracked human morality patterns based on transaction behavior. He built it because he no longer believed morality existed naturally. Everything in his life was bought. Everything. Smiles, hugs, trust, love. He used to believe love was real, until the woman he gave millions of dollars to, the woman he planned to marry, the woman who kissed his forehead while telling him he was the only man she'd ever trust, wiped his accounts clean in the middle of the night. She didn't just take his money. She took his worldview. She smashed the part of his soul that believed in good. After that night, Tony never again believed anyone was pure. Not without price. Not without motive. Not without agenda. Money was a microscope. It revealed the rot every human tried to hide. So Tony didn't look at Jennifer as a sweet, innocent woman. He looked at her as an experiment. He had already confirmed the glitch. He could have reversed that $1 billion instantly, but he didn't. He held it there. He froze it in her account on purpose for 12 hours. He wanted to see what she would do. He wanted to see what any human would do, because every person he ever met would have spent a portion, even a small portion, just an experiment purchase, a test dip into temptation, $20 for fast food, $200 for clothes, $50,000 for a car, something. Humans always spend when given access. Everyone wants something. Money is a microscope, and people show their true face under it. He expected Jennifer to break like all the others, to act like every human he had ever known, to taste the forbidden fruit. But then he saw her account activity freeze. No transactions, not even a single penny moved. He leaned forward in his chair, slightly, eyes narrowing. "She's resisting," he muttered. His fingers tapped the glass desk as he watched the data feed update. Nothing changed. Her account remained untouched. Tony frowned. Humans always break. Humans always cave. He checked the monitoring again. Still no movement. He zoomed the activity window to show time logs down to milliseconds. Nothing. Not even a test swipe. He expected this moment to thrill him. Instead, he felt something unexpected, a pulse of discomfort in his chest. Goodness was uncomfortable to him now, like a foreign language. He stared at the screen for minutes. He couldn't look away. Rain kept sliding down the windows of his office, like the night itself was crying for him. He remembered another night, years ago, when he taught himself the hardest lesson any wealthy man learns. When you give someone access to money, you see who they truly are. He had given love. He had given trust. He had given everything a man could give. And in return, he got betrayal. That betrayal became his doctrine, his rule, his shield. And yet, this woman, this single mother with $24 to her name, was refusing the most tempting fruit in human history. $1 billion. Untouched, unmoved, unclaimed. Tony stared at the screen, frozen, and for the first time in a long time, he felt something tight in his throat. It wasn't fear. It was disbelief. He whispered to himself, voice low, almost resentful, "Why isn't she breaking?" He felt the urge to pace. He rarely ever paced, but tonight he did, back and forth across his office, shoes silent against the marble. He checked the logs again. Still frozen. No movement. His heart beat a little faster, not in excitement, but in irritation. Humans were predictable. Humans always fell. So why wasn't she? Was she scared? Confused? Strategically waiting? Trying to cover her tracks? Was she planning something more clever? He needed to know. He needed to see it. He leaned closer toward the data feed. This was his final whisper. Cold, controlled, razor sharp. Let's see if she cracks. He adjusted the time. Freeze on the funds, keeping the $1 billion right there, waiting for the moment humanity reveals itself. Do you think Tony is testing her or setting her up? Tell me your opinion in the comments. Morning light slipped through the blinds like pale gold blades cutting into the darkness of the room. Jennifer's eyes felt swollen. She barely slept. She didn't even know if she could sleep after what she had seen. Every time she closed her eyes, those 12 zeros flashed behind her eyelids. $1 billion. Her phone sat under her pillow all night like a secret grenade. She didn't move it. She didn't unlock the screen. She didn't tap anything. She just watched over her sleeping baby boy and waited for sunrise. By 8:10 a.m., she had packed her child's small bag, fed him gently, and wrapped him in his soft little blanket. She wasn't going to run. She wasn't going to hide. She was going to the bank to do the right thing. And as she walked into the bright, crisp air outside, her heart pounded with every step. She didn't have a car. She took the bus. The same bus she always took. Except this time, there was something surreal about sitting among strangers while holding $1 billion inside her account. No one around her knew. Nobody would ever guess. She didn't act wealthy. She didn't look wealthy. She didn't smell wealthy. She didn't speak like the wealthy. She was just a tired woman holding her child's bag and trying not to panic. Her mind kept whispering, just breathe, just get to the bank. When she finally reached the branch, the automatic door slid open, and the cold air, conditioned breeze wrapped around her like a warning. Jennifer walked toward the counter, holding her baby with one arm, her documents folded with the other. The teller, a young woman, smiled politely. "Good morning. How can I help you?" Jennifer swallowed. Her voice trembled. "I need to print all my statements. I need to speak to someone in authority." The teller blinked, confused, but nodded respectfully. "Sure. How many pages?" Jennifer didn't know the number, but she whispered, "All of them, especially last night." The teller typed on the keyboard, then paused, eyebrows lifting slightly. Her screen had just revealed the figure. She looked up at Jennifer again this time. Her expression changed. "Ma'am, please wait here." Within seconds, the teller vanished into back office. Jennifer's stomach turned. Minutes passed like hours. Her baby rested on her shoulder, asleep, peaceful, unaware. Finally, a man in a gray suit approached her. He looked like the branch manager, mid-40s, composed, someone who handles legal situations often. He lowered his voice. "Miss Sofa, may I ask you to step into my office?" Jennifer nodded, heartbeat in her ears. Inside the small glass office, she sat down slowly, adjusting her child on her lap. The manager spoke carefully. "We noticed something unusual in your account activity. We need clarification." Jennifer looked him straight in the eyes. No hesitation. No fear of telling the truth. She said, "I didn't touch it. I didn't move a single cent. I printed the notification. I printed everything. I need to return it." Her voice cracked a bit, but it was firm. The man stared at her, shocked. You could see it in his eyes. Most people would have planned their escape route by now. Most people would have already purchased something. Most people wouldn't be sitting here voluntarily admitting the presence of $1 billion in their account. He opened a computer file, clicked rapidly, reviewing the digital logs. Then, quietly, he said something Jennifer would never forget. "You have no idea how rare this is." He printed the entire transaction record. He printed her timestamps. He printed the before and after balances. Jennifer organized every sheet neatly and slid them across the desk. "I came here because I don't want trouble. I just want whatever belongs to whoever belongs to." Returned. The manager slowly nodded. "This will need to be escalated." He picked up the phone, spoke discreetly. Tone type, professional, urgent. Jennifer didn't understand all the codes he used, the corporate terms, the references to executive authorization and HQ confirmation protocols. But she understood one thing. This was no longer a bank-level situation. This was bigger than the building they were sitting in, bigger than this branch, bigger than this city. This wasn't normal money. This was corporate federal level, and she was now in the center of it. The manager hung up, then leaned forward. "Miss Sofa, someone from corporate headquarters wants to see you." Her heart dropped. She almost whispered, "Why? I didn't do anything wrong." The manager raised a calm palm. "This isn't about punishment." He slid a folded paper across the desk. It wasn't a form. It wasn't a ticket. It was an address. A very specific address. A corporate headquarters tower. The kind you don't walk into unless you have status, or power, or wealth, or clearance. Jennifer's eyes widened slowly. She held the paper between her trembling fingers. This wasn't a casual building. This wasn't a local office. This was the address of the people who owned the transfer route, the origin, the source, the peak of the banking chain. Jennifer clutched her baby a little closer. Her throat tightened. Her voice barely came out. "Do I have to go?" The manager replied quietly. "Miss Sofa, they requested you personally." Her heart slammed. Personally? Why personally? Jennifer stared at the address again, her mind spinning. Every cell in her body was screaming that her life had just been pulled into something that could not be undone. She nodded slowly, still holding the paper, still processing reality. She stood up, holding her child, and walked out of the manager's office with documents, proof, integrity, and terror. Jennifer steps outside the bank, holding the corporate address in her hand, and knowing that her life can no longer return to normal. The building was unreal. Jennifer had never seen anything like this before, not even in movies that pretend to show billionaire spaces. Skyscrapers always looked intimidating, but this one, the specific tower, didn't just rise into the sky. It owned the sky. It was glass and steel and silence. A structure that didn't need to scream its power, because power radiated from it naturally. Her bus ride here felt like crossing timelines. Poor neighborhoods, middle districts, business zone, financial apex. The higher the buildings became, the more she felt like she was stepping away from the world she belonged to. Her baby slept against her shoulder again, his innocence grounding her, reminding her she wasn't here to chase fantasy dreams or greed. She was here because she had integrity, because she refused to let temptation steal her soul, because she believed that doing the right thing still mattered. The automatic rotating glass door slid open as she approached. A security man in black suit, tall, well-built, posture military level, stepped forward. "Name!" His tone wasn't rude, but it wasn't friendly either. This building didn't do casual conversation. Jennifer swallowed. Jennifer Sofa. That name felt small in her mouth in this space. He typed into a tablet. Within seconds, his entire attitude changed. His eyebrows lifted, only slightly, but enough to show recognition. He tapped his earpiece. Confirmed. She's authorized. Authorized. That one word stunned Jennifer so hard she almost forgot how to breathe. She didn't feel authorized. She didn't feel worthy. She didn't feel like she belonged anywhere near billion-dollar floors. She didn't even feel like a guest here. She felt like someone who slipped into a place she wasn't allowed to exist in. Security nodded toward a second guard who stepped forward and held out a small tray. On it, a temporary security badge. "Please wear this until you are processed upstairs." Jennifer took it with shaking hands. It was heavier than she expected. It wasn't plastic. It was metal. Real, polished metal. She clipped it to her shirt, gently, like she was afraid it would disappear if she touched it too hard. Then the guard gestured toward the elevator lobby. Executive floors. 42nd elevator. She turned her head. 42nd? There were so many elevators, lined like a metallic wall, each with its own digital key code. This wasn't a building. It was a vertical private universe. Jennifer held her child close, adjusted his blanket, and walked forward. The elevator number 42 flashed green as she approached. Automatic recognition. The door slid open silently. There was no button panel inside. No floor numbers. This elevator wasn't meant for normal humans. It was programmed. Destination. Automatically assigned based on badge data. Jennifer stepped inside. The doors closed. The elevator didn't jolt, didn't shake, didn't hum. It rose like it was floating, like gravity had been turned off. The glass side of the elevator revealed the entire city, shrinking beneath her, like she was ascending into another dimension. Jennifer pressed her son's head closer to her chest, letting him sleep. Her heart kept asking impossible questions. Who is behind this? Why me? Is this about to turn into a nightmare? Rain clouds moved outside as the elevator went higher and higher. She felt the entire skyline shift beneath her feet. She didn't know exactly which floor she was going to. The elevator didn't display numbers. It displayed identity. Her identity. Then it slowed and stopped. The doors opened with a soft hydraulic whisper. A long corridor. Carpeted. Silent. Expensive. Minimalist decor, heavy glass, black wood, brushed gold fixtures. The kind of design that doesn't scream luxury, but whispers. Money lives here. Jennifer stepped out cautiously. A female assistant, dressed corporate clean, approached her. "Miss Sofa?" Jennifer nodded. "Right this way." She followed. The hallway seemed endless, like walking through a museum of silence. No voices. No footsteps. Just the gentle sound of her baby breathing. Then, two heavy glass doors at the end of the hall slid open automatically. Inside, standing with his back toward her, hands in pockets, looking out at the skyline, stood the billionaire. Tony Jeff. Tall, sharp-shouldered, dark-tailored suit. Presence like a storm trapped in flesh. He didn't turn immediately. He waited, as if he wanted to feel the weight of her entrance before acknowledging it. Jennifer's knees almost buckled. She had never been this close to power before. She stepped forward one foot, then another, every nerve in her body on fire. She stopped 2 meters behind him. Quiet, frozen, terrified. Tony finally turned, slowly, his eyes focusing on her face, expression unreadable. This wasn't a man looking at a stranger. This was a man looking directly into her soul. Jennifer couldn't speak. She didn't know what to say. What do you say to the man who just dropped $1 billion into your life? Tony's jaw tightened slightly, not anger, just calculation. She held her baby tighter, as if shielding him from reality. Tony took one step closer, not threatening, but controlled, measured. Jennifer's breath got stuck in her throat. She stands there, in the office of a billionaire, unable to move, unable to speak, terrified of what comes next. Where in the world are you watching from? Comment your country. I want to see how far this moment is reaching. For almost 5 full seconds, the room didn't move. No sound, no shift, no air. Just 2 humans standing in the same space, but from 2 completely different universes, staring at each other with equal disbelief. Tony finally spoke, voice low, slow, controlled. "You know why you're here." Jennifer swallowed, her throat tight, but she forced herself to stand straighter. Her legs were shaking, but she didn't let them collapse. Her arms trembled, but she held her baby securely. She reached into her worn fabric tote bag with her free hand and pulled out the printed papers she had gotten from the bank. Transaction logs, time-stamped, proof of NON action. She placed them on the glass table between them, carefully, gently, like she was placing a sacred object. Then she whispered, voice fragile but steady, "I didn't touch anything." Tony's eyes moved from her face to the papers and back again. He didn't look shocked. He looked disarmed, like something inside him just cracked. Silently, he studied the logs, not as a man trying to confirm, but as a man realizing that his worst belief about humanity might have just been proven wrong. Jennifer's hands were still clasped tight together. She felt exposed, like she was standing naked in front of judgment. "I didn't move the money," she repeated quietly. "I don't want something that isn't mine." Tony slowly placed the papers down, very slowly, like they were heavy with meaning. He took a long breath, inhaled it like someone who hadn't believed oxygen still existed. Then he said, almost under his breath, "You really didn't." Jennifer nodded. Tony stepped toward her, very slightly, enough to shorten the distance. His voice was different now. Less ice, more revelation. "You had $1 billion at your fingertips, and you did nothing with it." It wasn't a question. It was an astonishment. Jennifer's eyes watered, but she refused to let a tear fall. She whispered, "I just want to do what is right." Those words didn't come from performance. They came from a person who had lived too long in a world where right and wrong were not always rewarded. They came from survival. They came from exhaustion. They came from someone who still believed in morality, even when life punished her for it. Tony stared at her, as if she had just spoken a language he thought had gone extinct. The room suddenly felt smaller. He turned slightly, hand behind his back, looking at the skyline again. When he spoke next, his voice was quieter, deeper, almost wounded. I've given people a fraction of that money before, and they still betrayed me. Jennifer didn't respond. She didn't understand history, but she understood the pain under the sentence. This billionaire, this titan of money, had been hurt, and that hurt rewired his belief about humanity. So he tested the world, again, and again, and again, expecting disappointment, expecting corruption, expecting greed. But Jennifer, she did the opposite. She didn't steal what she could have taken. She didn't touch what she could have claimed. She didn't run away. She came here voluntarily, with evidence, to return the money. That is when Tony's voice shifted, barely audible, but loaded with meaning. Do you know how rare you are? Jennifer's lips trembled, but she said nothing. Silence hung again, but this time it wasn't uncomfortable. It was significant. It was transformative. Tony reached into his jacket pocket, slowly, deliberately, as if retrieving something important. Jennifer's heart skipped, panic flaring again. For a moment, she wondered, is this where the punishment happens? A written penalty? An arrest warrant? A legal release form? Tony pulled out something small, black, metallic, polished, minimalistic. He held it between his fingers, letting the light reflect against its surface. Jennifer's breath froze, because she didn't know what it was, but Tony did. And for him, this object symbolized something that most millionaires would commit crimes to possess. He looked her directly in the eyes and stepped closer, 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 until there was only one step between them. He held the small item out between his fingertips toward her. Tony Jeff, the billionaire, is now holding something in his hand. And Jennifer still doesn't know if this is a reward, or a turning point, or a test inside a test. If you're still here, and this story has your full attention, hit subscribe. It tells us to continue creating powerful stories like this. Jennifer stared at Tony's hand, not breathing, not blinking, not even fully understanding what she was witnessing. Her instinct told her this wasn't a card of punishment. It wasn't a legal threat. It wasn't a debt signature. It wasn't documentation for reversal. It looked like access, but her mind could not process it. Tony gently took her hand, lifted her palm, and placed the object into it. It was heavier than she expected. Cold, solid, smooth like something engineered with precision. A matte black titanium badge. No logo, no company name. Just a single embedded micro horizontal gold line, thinner than a hair, etched across the center. She could feel its weight both physically and emotionally. She looked up at Tony, confused. What is this? Tony didn't smile. He didn't answer immediately. He let her feel the weighted question. Finally, after a long second, he spoke. Money rewards impulse. Access rewards character. Jennifer felt her breath catch in her chest. He pointed to the badge, still in her trembling hand. That card grants entry into my private HQ, the floor above this one. It's my inner circle wing. People with net worths in the hundreds of millions don't have that level of clearance. Jennifer's knees weakened. She nearly stepped back. I don't understand, she whispered. Tony stepped closer, his voice lower now, more intimate, more sincere. You returned $1 billion and didn't touch a penny. I don't need to pay you. I need to trust you. Those words detonated inside her. Trust. Her entire life, she'd been underestimated, treated small, invisible in crowds, passed over for promotions, told she wasn't enough, told to be realistic. She never thought she'd hear that word, trust, from a man the world bowed to. Jennifer stared at the titanium badge, her hands slightly shaking. Tony continued, this badge doesn't buy things. It opens doors. Strategic ones. Doors that money alone cannot open. He paused, eyes locked on hers. This is not charity. It is a key. Jennifer blinked, too stunned to speak, because she had never been handed something that implied future before. She had only ever been handed limits. Tony stepped back, walked slowly behind his desk, but his voice remained steady as he delivered the sentence that changed the trajectory of her entire life. Come back tomorrow at 9 a.m. Jennifer's head snapped up. Tomorrow, Tony nodded. That badge will grant you direct access. Use the private executive elevator. The system will recognize your DNA hash when it scans your palm. Her heart pounded. He was speaking to her the way executives spoke to people who already belonged. A billion-dollar world, now pulling her in, not because she begged, not because she seduced, not because she tricked anyone, but because she chose honesty when she could have chosen escape. Jennifer slowly closed her fingers around a badge, like she was holding a newborn dream. Why me? She whispered, voice almost broken. Tony, for the first time, allowed some emotion to leak through the cracks in his armor. Because I thought integrity was extinct, he said quietly. And you proved it still breathes. Jennifer nodded, eyes glassy, filled with a mixture of disbelief and gratitude and fear of the unknown. She took a single step back, still clutching the titanium badge, still digesting the magnitude of what this moment meant. She felt like she had just been marked by destiny. Tony didn't dismiss her. He didn't escort her out. He simply turned to his monitors, as if preparing for the next chapter, because in his mind, her chapter had already begun. Jennifer turned toward the exit. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears as she walked, step by step, toward the elevator again. And as she left the office, she looked down at her baby, sleeping peacefully in her arms, unaware that his entire life just shifted from surviving tomorrow to owning tomorrow. She clutched the badge tighter. She whispered into his soft hair, Mommy is stepping into a new world. The elevator door slid open. She stepped inside, and as the doors closed, Jennifer realized this wasn't the ending of the billion-dollar mistake. This was the beginning of a billion-dollar transformation. Tony Jeff just gave her access, not money. Tomorrow, 9 a.m., she enters the billionaire's inner world. Do you think she deserves this opportunity? Yes or a no? Type your answer in the comments below. Power is never quiet. And when Tony Jeff, the youngest black billionaire in global digital finance, grants a single mother clearance access higher than some hedge fund chairman, people notice. By mid-morning the next day, rumors begin to bloom like wildfire inside the skyscraper. Whispers around conference tables. Side eyes between analysts. Speculation buried inside marble hallways. Nobody knew Jennifer's name yet, but they knew something radical happened because Tony had never upgraded anyone's access level in a single day. Not even executives. Not even investors. Not even the foreign sovereign wealth fund that begged for partnership last quarter. This woman, Jennifer, showed up in ripped jeans, swollen eyes from no sleep, a thrift store coat, and a diaper bag over her shoulder. And she walked through level 0 clearance, straight into level black access, highest clearance in the entire building. Security guards didn't question it. They scanned her badge. The system blinked green. She was allowed through. Every executive who saw it felt like the universe tilted. Inside the boardroom that morning, Tony's board members confronted him indirectly, through politeness laced with venom. They didn't dare accuse him directly, but they tried to frame the question behind corporate concern. Sir, was that young woman part of a new project? Tony didn't answer. He didn't explain. He simply said, she represents something you can't quantify. And he walked away, leaving multimillionaires speechless. Meanwhile, Jennifer didn't change. She didn't go rent a luxury apartment. She didn't buy designer clothes. She didn't go buy a new car. She bought exactly 3 things that day. Groceries, diapers, formula. She passed store windows filled with jewelry, perfume, handbags. And she walked right past them, never flinching, because she never saw herself in shiny things. She saw herself in responsibility. And Tony watched, not with stalking obsession, but with curiosity. He watched her spend. He watched her not spend. He analyzed her patterns through the same real-time predictive finance tools he used to identify fraud globally. And not one change in her life suggested greed. She didn't want wealth. She wanted stability. That difference hit him harder than he expected. Late afternoon, Tony stood inside his glass office, overlooking the trading floor several stories below. The building was made of reinforced bulletproof crystal, a see-through fortress, so from his vantage, he could watch everything without being seen clearly. Jennifer was downstairs, sitting in a waiting area, filling out basic internal clearance on boarding, with her baby sleeping in the stroller beside her. No lawyer, no agent, no influencer cameras, no social media bragging. Just a mother, humble, still grounded, staring occasionally at her child to make sure he was breathing comfortably. Tony's jaw tightened slightly. Something changed in him in that moment, because for years his world had been filled with people who crave his power, but never his presence. Gold diggers, corporate traders, personal opportunists, people who worship the numbers, but not the soul behind them. Jennifer didn't ask for a cent more than she needed to stay alive. Jennifer didn't ask for anything. She didn't even know what the badge really meant yet. But Tony did, and seeing her sitting there, tiny against the enormous architecture of power, not bending under the weight, not losing herself in the shock, not trying to exploit this moment, it hit him hard, because somewhere deep in his guarded heart, Jennifer had become the proof he stopped believing existed. Someone who didn't want to take from him. Someone who didn't want to use him. Someone who wasn't seduced by power. Someone honest, simply because honesty was her default nature. She wasn't his weakness. She was his anchor, his reminder that humanity wasn't dead. And he hadn't realized, until this moment, how desperately he needed to feel that again. From his glass-walled vantage point, Tony Jeff kept watching her. He didn't smile, but his eyes softened, enough for his secretary to notice a shift in his aura for the first time in years. Then, softly, barely audible, Tony whispered to himself, "She's different." Tony stand behind a glass, silently watching Jennifer, and in his mind, she becomes the one person who reminds him what humanity should look like. Tomorrow, everything changes. Comment your current time plus location right now. And if you are still watching this story unfold without hitting subscribe yet, this is the moment to do it. Your tiny click helps us keep producing stories that touch the heart. Jennifer had never been the center of anyone's universe before. And yet, overnight, it felt like the world she once begged to notice her finally turned its head. Not because she became rich, but because she refused to become corrupt. But the most dangerous reaction wasn't from strangers. It came from familiar faces. Her phone buzzed constantly. Old acquaintances she hadn't spoken to in years suddenly remembered she existed. Cousins who once ignored her texts. Co-workers who never offered to cover a shift. People who had walked past her at her lowest without even asking if she was okay. Now they wanted something. One text said, "Girl, you are crazy. Keep at least 1 million. What's the worst he can do?" Another, "Just transfer some to us quietly. Nobody needs to know." Another, "You deserve compensation. Take something." One even joked, "Tell me you didn't return all of it. Seriously." It wasn't really jokes. It was envy disguised as humor. It was greed wrapped in casual suggestion. Jennifer read the messages, her heart heavy, because she realized most humans would have failed the test she didn't even know she was being judged by. Her integrity wasn't normal. It was rare, and rare things invite suspicion. Some voices tried to shame her. "You're such a fool. Now you still have nothing." It hurt, because she did still have nothing materially. But she had something that money could not replace. The sound of her child sleeping peacefully, knowing she remained someone he could be proud of one day. And that counted more than diamonds. Meanwhile, Tony sat across from her, inside his private inner sanctum, the floors above the world. She sat on one side of the six-figure conference table. He sat on the other, not as a CEO assessing a subject, but as a wounded man trying to understand how a soul could still stay clean in a world built to corrupt. And there, behind bulletproof glass, at the top of a metropolis built on greed, Tony did something he had not done in years. He talked about himself. Not the money, not the empire, not the power, but the trauma. He looked at Jennifer, directly, nothing between their gaze. "My first love stole from me," he confessed quietly. Jennifer's chest tightened. She didn't drain my bank. She destroyed my faith. She taught me that everyone eventually wants something, and I spent the last 5 years choosing profit over people. Jennifer didn't speak. She listened, the way she always listened people in pain. Tony leaned back slowly, hands folded, gaze heavy. "You returned $1 billion, he said. And when I saw that, it felt like the world suddenly had a heartbeat again. Then, after a long pause, he exhaled, voice softer. "Jennifer, how did you remain pure in a world so cruel?" The question slammed into her, because nobody had ever seen her in such profound way before. Her eyes watered, not because of his words, but because of what they represented. Recognition. From someone powerful. From someone she didn't have to justify her worth to. From someone who saw her. Truly, the room fell quiet, the weight of honesty hanging between them like an invisible bridge. Tony's voice softens, vulnerable, real, as he asks, "How did you remain pure in a world so cruel?" And Jennifer must now answer questions she never asked herself. What do you think shaped Jennifer's character more? Nature or experience? Comment your guess below. The word wealth had always been defined by numbers, digits, assets, balance sheets, measured power. But Tony realized, in the presence of his quiet, ordinary single mother, that the true definition of wealth was character. Because money amplifies who someone already is. It never transforms them. If a person is greedy, wealth becomes a weapon. If a person is empty, wealth becomes addiction. But if a person is rooted in integrity, wealth becomes responsibility. Jennifer didn't just prove integrity, she embodied it. And Tony, a man who once believed nobody in this world still possessed moral courage, could no longer deny what stood in front of him. So inside that titanium glass sanctum, surrounded by the skyline, Tony Jeff spoke a sentence that once would have been unthinkable for a man who trusted no one. You earned your place, not by money, but by moral courage. Jennifer froze, because she never asked for a place. She never chased it. Life never gave her anything easy, yet she didn't grow bitter. She grew principled. Tony stood up from his chair, walked around the table. And this time, he didn't speak to her like she was a civilian standing outside the fortress of power. He spoke to her as if she already belonged inside it. In this building, power is everywhere, he said. Money buys loyalty. Money controls outcomes. Money bends laws. He paused, his voice lowering. But money cannot create character. Jennifer swallowed hard, her eyes shining, not with excitement, but with a strange feeling she had no name for. Respect, maybe even reverence. She had spent her entire life invisible. Now she was indispensable. Tony turned, looked out toward the skyline, the lights of the city flickering like fireflies below. "Everyone around me wants to take," he said. "You're the first person in years who didn't want anything except to do the right thing." He looked back at her, this time not with suspicion, but with something much deeper. Trust. And that was when he did something symbolic, but powerful. He placed his palm flat over his own heart, not as a romantic gesture, but as a pledge. "You will be my voice of conscience," he told her. "Not a charity case, not a gold digger, not a corporate token. You are the one person whose presence reminds me what integrity looks like." Jennifer felt her knees weaken, not because of the honor, but because for the first time in her life, someone believed she had value before she ever owned anything. She looked down at the titanium badge, glowing in her hand beneath the office lights. A key to a world she didn't buy, but a world she was invited into, not because she was wealthy, but because she was incorruptible. Later that night, as she walked out of the skyscraper, pushing her son's stroller beneath the cold night wind, something inside her shifted forever. The world outside still saw a struggling single mother, but she was no longer that. She was living proof that integrity is currency, that honesty is power, that moral courage is destiny. And tomorrow, when she returned, she would not return as a stranger. She would return as someone who belonged in the rooms where the future was built. Her life had been rewritten, not by winning a lottery, but by passing a test nobody warned her was happening. And history would remember her not for her poverty, but for her refusal to let poverty corrupt her soul. Jennifer walked forward, not into fantasy, but into purpose. And somewhere behind her, high above, Tony watched through glass, silently knowing this wasn't luck. This was destiny choosing the rare few who still protect what is sacred. Comment your country plus current time. We want to see how global this moment is. And tell us honestly, should this become a full mini-series? If this story touched something deep inside you, hit subscribe right now. It may be your small way of supporting stories that restore faith in humanity.